Yes, I was born in Erie. May 7th, 1934.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
I can remember the news when it come on that went to war. I think that was what, 41. I was what, 7, and I remember I was had a real scared feeling because I said, "Uh-oh," and I can remember all the rationing. My mother couldn't get flour, only so many pounds of coffee a month. Could only get so much flour. My father, we weren't allowed to drive your cars on Sunday. My father drove one Sunday, tried to take us out to Peninsula one day, and on a Sunday, he got a ticket because he wasn't supposed to use your car for pleasure. I can remember that as a kid. Every time a bunch of airplanes were always flying over, and my brother and I, we used to say, "Oh no!" And I can remember when they had the practice air raids, we'd get under the dining room table and hide, and everybody had to turn all their lights off. My father was what you call a warden. He'd go out and make sure in the neighborhood that everybody stuff. I can remember all that, and it was a real scary feeling because as a kid. And I can remember then after the war, how everybody celebrated, and my father finally could go out and buy tires for his car, and could had all the gas he wanted and stuff like that. My memory's pretty good when it comes to that stuff. I lived down in Erie on 6th and Poplar Street, which was across from Ridley Park. So of course, as a kid, there wasn't much you could do during the war. So me and my buddies and our chums around the neighborhood, we spent a lot of time at the bayfront, fishing, hiking around, had BB guns down there, plunking cans and stuff like that. What you could do back then, you know. And because there wasn't much you could do. Saw a lot of movies. That's when movies and clubs became big time because there was nothing people could buy. People wanted to go to the clubs to have something to do. I can remember my father going to the club and getting a babysitter on Fridays and Saturday nights. My brother and I always had a babysitter because this is what they did back then. Yeah. It was a scary feeling, though, as a kid. Every time I even got to the point where I kind of got in airplanes, I could almost identify planes just by looking up at them and recognize the sound of the motor and stuff like that. You know, that's a P-38, that's a P-47, that's a Curtiss Wright, that's a Mustang, stuff like that. And the reason, like I say, what they did at that time, I can remember all the factories. They blacked out all their windows in their factories because they were running 24 hours a day making war stuff. And Erie, they always think Erie could have been a target, they thought, because if they could come in, they would hit Buffalo, they'd hit Cleveland, they'd hit Pittsburgh, and Erie was kind of in there, and Erie had a pretty good manufacturing plant. So at the thing, and everybody down here, we practiced having air raid drills. Once or twice a week, the sirens would go off, and we'd get under the dining room table. My brother and I can remember being scared to death, thinking, "Oh, is it real or is it fake?" And so that's some of that stuff back. That was early.